Hey guys, Jason from TechAU, and I'm here with the Tesla Model Y that is finally in Australia. After 3 long years of waiting since the announcement, it's finally in the country, and for the next week, this will be my daily driver. After spending about 24 hours with the car, I thought it's time to stop and relay some of my initial impressions of the vehicle, talk to you about the extra space and storage and the key things, the key reasons you'll buy this over the Model 3. But ultimately, what it boils down to is the fact that this is everything you love about a Model 3 and some more. So there's not a lot of downsides for going up in height, up in space, and up in storage. One of the key reasons you're going to buy a Model Y over a Model 3 is the extra storage space available, which is great for that weekend away or the week-long holiday when you're packing in a lot of suitcases and extra stuff for the kids. This extra space available in the trunk is really amazing. So if we open the bottom floor here, of course there's storage. With the space available that would normally go to a fuel tank in an ICE vehicle, Tesla does a great job of maximising that and giving you extra storage. So in the Y, because of the extra height, you've even got more in there, which is impressive. And the story doesn't stop there either. You've got these 2 huge side bins that really can be used for whether it's groceries day to day or just extra stuff you need when you're travelling. And then if we open this back section, there's even more storage. And while that's fairly shallow, I'm not 100% sure what you'd use for it. I'm sure people will find uses for it. When it comes to the front, it's as easy as opening it from the mobile app or inside on the screen. But you'll notice that this is a really deep frunk, and even with a decent sized backpack in there, you've still got space to spare. But when I take that out, you can see just how deep that is. Really an amazing amount of storage on offer between the front and the back of this vehicle. Something different with the Model Y is just how dark this rear window tint is. Compared to the Model 3, I think it's a lot more severe, and there's not the same level of tint on the front. So I think that's one of the first upgrades a lot of Model Y owners will do. Now, what do you get from a rear tint? You obviously get a bit of privacy, but certainly for the kids in the back, if it's a warm summer Australian day, that's a great option to keep some of that heat out. And there's also the tint on top as well. So really inside the cabin, it's going to be reasonable. You've also got the cabin overheat protection, so that'll fire on the air conditioning and keep things cool inside if you need. Now, one of the things I've done is strapped in my car seat for my little girl. And when you do that, you start to get an appreciation of just the distance between the car seat and the chair in front. Now, that's in a normal seating position. I was in there earlier. And what you can see is it's quite a distance for the kids' feet, and that means they're not going to be kicking the chair in front. So something else you'll need to know about the Model Y's rear seat is it can actually recline. So there's sort of a 2-stage position there. We happen to have a car seat that can also recline, so that just makes it more comfortable for the daughter in there. Something you'll notice getting in and out of the Model Y is just how easy that is. Sort of stepping in and stepping out is just a very different experience than what we had in the Model 3. Rather than stepping down and into the vehicle, you sort of step sideways into it. And anybody who sort of has any mobility issues, that's just such a much more appealing option for them. Having these risers on the seat here, it just gives you more practical entry and exit from the vehicle. What that means as well is that if you're getting into the rear of the vehicle, you've got more space for your feet to slide under the chair in front. Now, if I get in the back of the car, you can see even with my height and having the seat back as far as I want as somebody who's 6'3", I've still got plenty of room in the back here. Obviously most drivers are maybe not as tall as me, so there's going to be even more room if you're a regular height. Inside the cabin, you've obviously got this glass roof, and so that gives you, a lot more headspace than you normally would. Completely different idea in terms of the structure, so you're not having this, in the Model 3 we've got this structure beam that goes across there, and what that does is really block this rear view. And from the Model Y, if you're a rear seat passenger, wow, you've got such a great experience to look up the trees on a country road or look up to the buildings in the city. What a magic experience to ride in the back of this. Super easy. You've got also controls over child lock. You can have it on both sides or just an individual side. So in our context with the car seat on the left, we would just have a child lock on that side. Coming into a turn now. This is quite a sharp hairpin turn. Just
even up a decent incline. I mean, this thing's still got power for days. It's a little unsettled when you push it hard through that corner, but outside of that, wow. Oh, that's fun. That's fun every day of the week. So let's talk about ride quality. After picking up the car in Melbourne, I drove down the Hume yesterday all the way to Wodonga, so a good 350k drive. I've been out driving in it today, so I've had the car for just over 24 hours now, driving it on some nice country windy roads, and the surfaces on our country roads are, I guess not too far from the city roads these days. After a lot of rainfall, the roads are breaking up and are pretty poor quality sometimes. So there's a lot of bumps and undulations and all that kind of good stuff to deal with, and so the suspension and ride quality is really not an issue. I think it's really been overplayed in terms of some of the reviews and write-ups so far to date, and I would hate to think that somebody reads something like that and then doesn't buy the Model Y because they think the ride's going to be too harsh or too rough. I can tell you that it's what you should expect for a Tesla, right? If you've ever ridden in one, driven one, if you have one right now, you know what a Tesla is. And yes, the ride height has increased, but that really increases the suspension travel, right? So you've got that compared, or adding to the fact that you've got some really nice soft seats to sit in. And honestly, the amount that flows through to you as a driver is quite little and very acceptable in my book. So you do have the capacity to control, the steering weight, which is personal preference as well. So you can go from sort of a standard to a more sporty feel to a comfort, which is the most relaxed version. And for freeway, highway driving, you're going to be on autopilot anyway, so you're not doing the steering. And then it's just around town. That's up to you what you like. But in terms of the, I'm going over a bridge right now, for example. There's bumps in that. It's perfectly fine. It's like such a non-issue, and I have a Model 3 Performance, so that's sort of where I'm coming from, and it's easily as good as that. Probably better because you do have that extra range in the suspension, but it can take a corner like that at speed, and there's just no body roll. It just takes it like it's on rails. So for a car that sits as high as this does, it's super impressive. And yes, the consequence of that is it's maybe a little harsher. You do feel bumps, but the bumps are not something that sort of throws you and resonates in your body. It's like, there was a bump and now it's gone, and move on with your life. So I tell you, as somebody who used to own a Lancer with modified coilovers, that was a harsh ride. The translation of hitting the bump with your wheel and then that moving through your body was quite severe, and the most severe I've experienced in a car, outside like a race car or something. But for a normal family mid-size SUV, this is absolutely acceptable and more than fine. So please don't be scared by that. I really think that some people with some different personal preferences, voice their concerns about this, but ultimately where I set a line is that it's a Tesla, and you should go into it with that expectation. I've had my family in it, their feedback is that it's also fine. And that's coming from my wife, who regularly drives a Honda CR-V. So it is a bit of a boat around corners. It's a very different sort of handling car, and certainly not a performance car. But so ultimately the question is, should Tesla have made the suspension setup in the lower tiers of the car? Now, we only get the standard range, but let's include the standard range and long range versions of the Model Y. Should they have eased off that sort of sporty feel a little bit, gone a little softer, and then just left the real performance feel to the performance model? Ultimately, what they're trying to do with their platforms is keep them as close as possible to each other, and by doing what they've done, I think they've offered a really good, compelling option, and it's such a non-issue. And look, this is the standard model, but I'm having a heap of fun, taking these corners at 70 k's an hour, and there's just nothing. There's no roll. It's just great. Sort of, as you know, with the acceleration, the regen braking, let that slow you into a corner and then accelerate out. It's just so much fun to drive this thing. That's what I first learned about my car, the Model 3 Performance, in 2019 when I got it. But you know, it's really followed through even to this Model Y. It doesn't feel like much of a compromise being this much higher. And you are literally many inches higher than the Model 3. So typically when other platforms have done this, they really, you know, they have severe issues in terms of their handling, because you can't raise up a normal car without having that body roll, without doing something. So they do need to, you know, change the suspension in an SUV, in an ICE vehicle, for example. But because the weight is really low, that center of gravity is really low in a Model Y, I think that almost comes for free inherent in the platform of the Y and the 3. So I wanted to share my thoughts on the handling and the ride comfort, because I think it's perfect. You know, it's really good. Could it be softer? Maybe, but you pay consequences for that. This is where Tesla has landed. It's a great setup. I enjoy driving it.
It's easy to see why the Model Y has been such a success internationally, and I've no doubt that's going to be repeated here in Australia. The extra space, the storage and utility the vehicle offers over a Model 3 just makes a lot of sense. It's the same car but better. Now, the one thing that's missing at launch is the ability for a towing package, but we hear from Tesla that's coming early 2023, so look out for that. Outside of that, my initial impression's incredibly good. It's everything you know and love about a Tesla, but some extra storage and extra space. So, brilliant car so far. I'm going to spend the rest of the week with it. I'll be bringing you a full review at the end of that and answering your questions on social media along the way. So, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the video, and that's it for the initial impressions of the Tesla Model Y in Australia.